radon is becoming huge in East Tennessee. Lots of water, lots of rock underground, and those kind of collide and release the gas for radon.
So what's the concern with radon?
Yep. So radon, it's the second leading cause of lung cancer. I've heard and I've read that if you have high radon levels in your house, it's the equivalent of smoking, I want to say, 8 cigarettes a day. So yeah, a harmful gas that it's odorless. There's no smell.
All right. Well, welcome to another edition of The Den, brought to you by the Knox Real Estate Group. And today, my special guest is none other than Daniel Barton with, oh my goodness, with Homespec. We may do that part again. Okay. Good morning. Eric Whitener here with the Knox Real Estate Group, bringing you another episode of The Den. And today we have special guest Daniel Barton with Homespec. Good morning.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm all tongue twisted today, Daniel.
No, that's all right. Yeah, it's spring, so allergies and pollen and everything else are going around. But no, good to be here. I'm excited to be on it.
Awesome, thank you, buddy. Just to give a little background, Daniel and I have been working together in the real estate space for, quite a few years now.
Yeah.
And you've been one of our primary home inspectors. So I'm really excited to talk to you because home inspections, I think, are something that, a lot of people don't really, they know they need to get one. At least most of them know they need to get one. They don't really understand, a whole lot about what a home inspection is or does.
Right.
So first of all, before we get going, let's just talk about this morning because we're in East Tennessee. You said it's almost spring.
Yep.
This morning's already been a little bit of a cluster due to weather.
Yeah.
It's raining. Not even that hard, but it's raining, and it's got traffic backed up all over the place.
Well, when traffic is terrible to begin with, it doesn't take much to make it worse. So it's which directly related to real estate. Our area is growing and traffic's becoming an issue. But yeah, you throw in some rain and low visibility, and it was tough to get here this morning. So
you kind of touched on something. So you've been here how long?
Born and raised.
Born and
raised here. I've lived here 40 years. Know every back road, but there's no such thing as back roads anymore. Everybody's found them out. So.
Yeah, and so you've seen in the last, obviously over 40 years, you've seen a lot of changes, but in the last 5 years.
Yes.
I've seen it's. I would say to a lot of people, when we say traffic is bad, it's relative. It's relative to our experience. Like this morning, traffic is bad because there's a few accidents on the interstate. Yep. It's got everybody using the side roads. I know when somebody comes here from a place like Nashville or Atlanta, and they chuckle.
Yeah.
Because our traffic is not that. Nor do we want that.
Right.
I'm not wishing that on anybody, but it is interesting when what we do have here that is unique to a lot of places is the intersection of two interstates.
Yeah.
And when that we have a ton of truck traffic and through traffic that adds to our normal daily commute. And then when somebody slips up, like today,
yep.
You said on the way here there was a couple slip ups.
Yep.
And that added how much longer to your commute?
Yeah, it doubled it. Doubled it. Usually takes me somewhere around 40 minutes to get here. It took an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. Well, I'm glad you made it.
Yeah.
And I hope everybody out there is safe. Yeah. But yeah, so traffic and weather is kind of an interesting thing around here.
So even the last, you said it, the last 5 years, 5 years ago, you knew, do not drive down this road at this time of day. But now there's really no there's really no off time. Yeah, it is like that all the time, which is nothing new. Like you said, the bigger, but for Knoxville, it's it's a problem.
It's one. It is a problem. They need to start addressing it sooner than later. We need to figure out something to alleviate our interstate to keep people off. Because right now we're on Kingston Pike, and right now there's all the traffic that is being rerouted because they're stuck on the interstate somewhere is hitting Kingston Pike, and all it's doing is backing up Kingston Pike. So we don't have, you know, we don't have a, like you said, really an arterial road
Yeah,
for people to take.
yeah, yep.
So,
That's right.
and so kind of getting to that, you're a good person to ask too, because I know you cover a pretty large area for home inspections.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you give the listeners kind of an idea of like like we're in Knoxville. How far do you
Yeah.
typically go?
So the bulk of my work is in Knox County. That's kind of where most of the population is. But really, that's kind of what we almost pride ourselves on. Is we will go just about wherever you tell us to. Kind of our sweet spot. We'll go an hour diameter in every direction. So Gatlinburg, Morristown. We'll go up to Tazewell, Campbell County, or as far over as Crossville, down toward Lenoir City, Sweetwater. So, Maryville. So we try to stay about an hour in every direction, but we've learned that those further out areas, and we've had clients tell us it's harder to find a home inspector that'll go that far. So yeah, we like being known as the ones that will kind of go out that way to be able to help you.
Well, and it's awesome because I'll tell you what, sometimes it's hard to fill in the gaps, especially between cities. Like between here and Morristown, there's not a whole lot, and so sometimes it's hard to find certain services in those areas.
Right.
I know, like for instance, we've got a great plumber. And you know Wayne.
Yep.
Great
Yep.
plumber, but Wayne will just tell you he's not going to go too far.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then you're stuck trying to find a plumber in some of these areas. So having the home inspector be able to travel like that is great because, I mean, you cover a larger area than I would say we typically cover. Again, bulk of our business is here in Knox County, and we do cover typically, the surrounding like 4 or 5 counties.
Right.
We don't do a whole lot currently. We don't do a whole lot in this Vierville Pigeon Forge area.
Yeah.
And I think you would agree with me. That's kind of a different beast over there.
It is. It's a completely different beast. Lots and lots of short-term rentals. Lots of turnover. But honestly, the hard part of the home inspections for Sevier County is kind of what we touched on earlier, is getting to it.
Yeah.
Traffic's been a problem up there for years just because it's so popular. So many people visiting. But typically, once you make it to the house and you're in the driveway, pretty decent shape because they keep them up, fairly regular maintenance because it's more a business for them as far as rentals versus long-term housing.
Cool. Well, let me ask you, how long have you been doing inspections?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me this, and it's kind of a weird answer. So I have been doing home inspections full time, going on my 14th year now.
Okay. That's
with that said, and this will kind of get into the history, and I don't know if you've ever heard all the history of Homespec. So my dad was really good friends with a gentleman named Larry Cordell back in the 80s.
okay.
Well, Larry had a family member who lived in Cincinnati in the 80s who opened up a home inspection company. And he called him and my dad and he said, "Hey, come up here, take a look at this. I've got an idea. I think it's going to take off." And my dad went up there. They followed him around for a week. on a couple home inspections, came back to Knoxville, and they were home inspectors.
Wow.
That's all it took back then. So there were no license, there were no special certifications. That's it. So they opened up shop, and mid to late '80s started doing home inspections. So I have kind of grew up around the business.
Wow. Yeah, that is a long time.
Yeah.
And now there's all sorts of, like, it's not just that simple. You can't just say, hey, I'm going to be a home inspector.
No, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. We have 32 hours continuing education every 2 years. The license part of it's pretty tough. It's similar to like a general contractor license. Lot of studying, 90-hour course that you have to go through, and then the state and national tests. So yeah, a lot more strenuous now.
That's just side note. It's interesting to me that you're required to take twice as many continuing ed as a real estate agent is.
So y'all have 16?
16. Yeah, every
Really?
2 years.
Yeah.
And out of that 16, 6 is the same. You have to take a required core class by the state every 2 years.
Really?
So
Yeah.
so you only get 10 like elective to get the minimum. You know, hopefully agents are doing more than that, but you're
Right.
required to get 32. So I find that
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
So you've been around this for a long time. So obviously seen a lot of changes, a lot of everything,
Yep.
in probably some crazy stuff too, I would assume.
Yeah.
So currently, like, tell me a little bit about like how your business is set up. Like, what is the Homespec today?
Yeah. Yeah. So we are primarily doing residential home inspections. And like we said, in the East Tennessee area, residential home inspections. We will do a little bit of small commercial, but what's really changed, I would say, over the last maybe 5 years or so, are the auxiliary services. Radon is becoming huge in East Tennessee. And rightfully so. We're in a high risk area for radon. Lots of water, lots of rock underground, and those kind of collide and release the gas for radon.
So and just to clarify for people, like radon's a gas, you just hit on it, but what's the concern with radon?
Yep. So radon, it's the second leading cause of lung cancer. I've heard and I've read that if you have high radon levels in your house, it's the equivalent of smoking, I want to say, 8 cigarettes a day. So yeah, a harmful gas that it's odorless. There's no smell. And it's a pretty easy test. So we have a monitor that we set out at the house. Every hour it takes an air sample. Mm-hmm. They recommend leaving it for at least 48 hours, and then it will measure all that and let you know what your radon levels are in your house.
And I feel like so radon doesn't just happen here. Obviously, it happens in other places of the country.
Right.
It's there's a certain level that it is acceptable because it's occurring in the air when you walk outside.
Right.
But I feel as if radon will become our next like lead-based paint.
Yep.
Like, we're still having people sign disclosures for lead-based paint for homes built previous to 1978, when at this point I almost feel like, your exposure to that paint's probably close to nothing, because how many times has the house been painted over or
Right.
been remodeled or,
Yep.
or whatever. But radon is something that we're starting to see more and more. Hey, do you want to get a radon test? Check this disclosure, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I think there's still a lot of confusion or uncertainty of what radon is, or where you would find it, because I was just at a home inspection yesterday on a new construction house, which we'll
Mm-hmm.
talk about a little bit, but it was one with a big crawl space.
Yep.
And that house had a passive radon pipe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the the home inspector, see, I thought all new construction homes were supposed to have this passive radon pipe.
Yep.
He said that not in crawl space homes, which I thought was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So that comes to like the main homes that typically you will find high radon in, are going to potentially find high radon in, are going to be like a slab base.
Yep. Or a basement.
Or a basement.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't necessarily get your home checked if you're on a crawl space.
Yeah. Yeah.
It could just depend.
Yeah. It is less likely on a crawl space. When it's working perfect, you have your foundation vents and it's breathing. It's kind of self-venting itself. With that said, we have did plenty of radon tests with crawl spaces that come back high. So it is less likely, but still it could be there.
And the funny part, so not that it's cheap, but the funny part about radon is, I personally, for something that is the second leading cause of cancer, feel like it's a very inexpensive fix. Right. For all this stuff. I mean, I've yet to see one be over $2,000.
Yep.
Right. So typically, $1,800, $1,700 to put a system in. If the house doesn't have a radon system in it, it's normally they put a pipe in that goes all the way down through the basement floor or the slab floor.
Yep.
They're drawing the air up. There's a fan, and the fan's the most expensive part. I think that's like $500-$600.
Yep.
Out of that, like $1,800. The rest of it's labor and then PVC pipe, basically.
Yep.
Now on newer homes that should have a passive pipe, just so the consumer knows, all you really normally have to do is add a fan, and maybe pop it through the
and finish it.
Through the roof.
Yep.
So it's definitely a little cheaper, a little less. The cool part about the new ones is the pipe's already hidden.
Right.
Where out of, if you have an older home and you have to basically retrofit it with a pipe, you're probably going to see it somewhere.
Running out of wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool. So what else? We kind of got on radon there, but on a normal home inspection, because people normally just get, the basic package.
Yep.
What is it you're looking for in a home inspection? What are you inspecting?
Yep.
Tell me about it.
So when people call and ask me that, I'll tell them, hey, we are going to touch every inch of this house. So the big things, we're on the roof. We're looking at your roof. We're looking all through your attic. We are checking the heat and air, all of your plumbing, running all of your plumbing, electrical, foundation, exterior. But it is very detailed. So we are checking every outlet in the house, opening and closing every window, opening and closing every door. And that's the misconception that I get sometimes, is people just don't know what all we're checking.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll show up and I'm like, all right, well, settle in. We're here for 2.5 to 3 hours. And they're like, oh, we had no idea that you were going to check all that. So no, it is very detailed. We like to say that we're gonna touch every surface in that house.
So as far as people showing up, do you recommend people show up and when?
Yeah. So probably in a perfect world, and I tell people, it doesn't matter to me. Come as long as you want to. But what most people will do, and what we have found works the best, if an inspection is going to last 2.5 hours, we say maybe come the last 45 minutes or an hour. That first hour and a half is going to be pretty boring for you to watch us turn faucets on and off and open and close windows. And that way at the end you can ask any questions. We can point out anything that we've seen. You can kind of see what we do. We can go over the summary. It still gives you plenty of time to be at the house and look around. We have a lot of people that say, hey, we're busy. We can't make it to the inspection. And that's fine too. Our reports are so detailed that they can look through everything and we're available. They can email, call, text. But then we have other people who show up right at the very beginning with notepad and pen, and they are ready to, and that's fine too.
Yeah.
It's a big investment for them, and I totally get that. And it's a great time for them to look around the house and be there with us. So, but typically they come maybe the second half just to catch up on everything.
So I know that we typically recommend our clients like hit it towards like the last half hour where they can maybe get some more, like maybe you're wrapping up and then that's the time to like go through the house. What our big fear is we don't want them to take away from the home
Right.
like we will like we basically tell them you want that home inspector focused on the house, not you. And then they can dedicate some time later, because the last thing you want is for somebody to be like, oh, I was going to check this and then I got distracted and then I didn't check that. And and most people, I would say most people get that.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, no, I want them to definitely be focused.
Yeah. And it's honestly just as much our fault as it is theirs, because if there's people there, we love people, we love houses, we love showing them what we're doing. So even if they are not wanting to talk to us, we just naturally gravitate toward them, and it may take some focus away there.
So one thing I like about you guys though is the accessibility, because I've obviously been doing this a while. I've seen a lot of home inspection reports. I've dealt with a lot of different home inspectors. First of all, I like your report system. I like the digital. I think we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
I like how it shows notes. You have big pictures. You can print it. You can do all sorts of stuff with it. But at the end of the day, sometimes people have questions, and to be able to talk to somebody and to go over it, because, man, I haven't seen one in a little while now, but it used to be you'd get a report from a home inspector, and it would be everything's in black and white, and then there's something in red, and it's like, this is defective. Right. And they're like, oh my gosh, like the house is falling apart, or this is awful, and typically it wasn't that bad. It was just a generic, like, this is how the report is, and I've never liked that.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something I really appreciate, and I know our clients do. And I know Teresa was just telling me the other day. She's like, I really like it when Daniel does my home inspection because he communicates.
Yep.
And that's definitely a big deal, especially like you said, you're dealing with somebody's biggest purchase, and they want to make sure they know the stuff. So to that, kind of coming full circle. Number one, on your reports, what are you normally noting?
Yeah. So we note everything, and that's why we feel that it's really important to communicate with the client. We encourage them. I will tell clients, after you get your report, read over it. Even if you don't think you have questions, call me, because we put everything from this roof needs to be replaced to the filter's dirty, or there's a cover plate missing on an outlet. So there are just a ton of pictures and information on there. We like to break it down, like you said. So red is, hey, this is a major concern, foundation problems, heat and air, roof. So you have your major concerns. This needs immediate attention. We have an orange, which is, hey, this is wrong. Probably need to have a specialist look at it. But it's not a major concern. And then we have blue. So blue is kind of your regular maintenance, informational, clean your gutters, change your air filters once a month. But that is all on the report, but it is coordinated so that it is in its own section. But that's what I tell clients. When you get our report, it's going to look like the house is in bad shape.
Yeah.
But the reason it looks like that is because we put so many things on there. So call us. Call us. We love to go over everything with you.
Well, that's okay. So that's something else that, like, when we're sitting down with a seller, um, we we always tell them, like, number one, when a home inspector comes, they're going to find something. I said, you could have a home inspector come through, and then you could fix everything on that home inspection, and then have another home inspector come through, and,
Right.
and they're gonna like their job is to hunt something, like to look everywhere, like no house is too clean
Yeah.
to not find something.
Yep.
And not that that's a bad thing. It's just what the job is, right? So as far as auxiliary services or other things you provide, we talked about radon. What are some other ones that are common?
Septic. In Tennessee, in the rural areas, still have a lot of septic systems. So we check septic. We do a dye test. So we basically flood the system, flush a dye through, and make sure that everything is draining how it should. So it's an operations check. I tell everybody I'm not back there with machinery digging out the tank. It's more an operations check than anything. Something else in rural areas, well testing, checking your water, making sure it's safe to drink and use, checking for bacteria in it. Something else, and we haven't did as many lately, and you know this more than me, but it's more a seller's market right now. But therefore, pre-inspections are a great idea. They're a great idea, and you just touched on it. If you're looking at selling your house, having us come through, check everything, make sure there's no major issues, and if there are, it kind of gives you the power to be able to tackle those things on your own terms versus getting surprised after the home inspection.
I can so I will tell you, I have gone both ways on that.
Yeah.
Okay, from my spot as a real estate agent, because if I'm working with the seller, so one thing in this state, we're a disclosure state, so the seller knows something that materially affects the property, they have to disclose it. And as an agent, if I know it, I have to disclose it,
Right.
Whether the seller wants me to or not.
Right.
Right. Like I'm obligated to do so. So there is that rare occasion where something pops up on an inspection where we're able to negotiate it in a deal because the buyer may be already kind of emotionally involved in the transaction, right? So like the deal is happening and there's the opportunity to make it work. So there's that where versus sometimes saying something on the front end, if the seller's not able to update it. For instance, let's just use a scary one, foundation issue.
Yep.
Right? So a foundation issue comes up during a home inspection and a deal. We were able to probably pull in professionals, get a quote, maybe even get it repaired to where the funds for that repair come out of closing, right? We're able to work all that. But on the front end, if we do the home inspection and you say, hey, there's a crack here, we need to get maybe a letter from a structural engineer or something, or we call out and they're like, hey, the quote is X amount, and the seller's like, I can't do that right now.
Right.
Well, now we're listing the property as having a foundation issue.
Yep.
Which never goes over well.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, if there were a market to sell a home with a foundation issue, it was in the last couple years.
Yeah.
But so that's always my concern.
Right.
Because your job is to find those things you just can't see. So the seller may not know.
Right.
They're sitting on something. And so other than that, like I definitely agree, like, because we tell people, if you're on a crawl space, like we just had Zach here with a Vaniclane. Hey, if you're on a crawl space, you probably have not looked at it. You need to have Zach come out here and check your crawl space.
Yeah.
I'm all about like getting the systems. I'm always though concerned that something's going to pop up that causes that seller stress on the front end. Now, that's not to say we do a deal and we can't save it, right? So that's a double whammy. Let's just say, a foundation problem comes up, buyer doesn't even negotiate with us, they walk. Well, now we've got a fallen through deal and a foundation issue.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a tricky.
It's hard.
It's a tricky spot to be in.
Yeah.
So you've been doing this. You said 15 plus years.
Yep.
Your dad was doing it a long time before that, and he's currently kind of semi-retired. He's kind of taking a little bit of a step back. Who else is in your operations?
So really, that's it. We're just a small outfit. It's me, kind of him, halfway him, and then my wife handles all of our office and scheduling and everything else. That is pretty much it right now.
True family business.
Yeah.
True family business. So you mentioned earlier before the show that you do about on average about 2 home inspections a day.
Yeah. Yep.
So, I mean, if you're doing that 5 days a week.
Yep, 5 days a week, 2 a day, 5 days a week, and we've just found there are busy times where we will try to squeeze in maybe one more during the day, but as a whole, that is just not a good business plan for what we do, because it takes a long time to do it the right way and to look at everything that you should. So there have been studies with home inspections. If you go from 2 a day to 3 a day, or some 4 a day, you're kind of robbing Peter to pay. You're taking time off this one to get to the next one. So 2 a day is that's a good full day where you have all the time that you need at a house to be able to look at everything how you should.
So if you're averaging 10 a week, you've seen a lot of homes.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a crazy number. A crazy number of homes.
I have not added, but yeah, I bet we have looked at. For me personally, I would say 5,000 plus homes, pretty easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm just curious. I know in the real estate space, a lot of agents get into the real estate world because they like to look at homes.
Yeah.
And I'd like to say, okay, so that's not a great reason to get into it, because I've seen so many homes personally that the home itself isn't exciting.
Yeah.
Right? The process is exciting to me. The helping the person is exciting to me. The other stuff around it is exciting. But the actual house itself, like there's houses out here in Farragut where I could already tell you the floor plan, and I've never even stepped into it.
Yeah.
I can just tell by looking at the outside.
Right.
Exactly where everything's laid out. Are you now, I mean, with that many homes under your belt, are you just like, is it routine at this point, or do you still get surprised? And
we get surprised every day.
Really?
Every day. Maybe not necessarily with the homes, but that's what I love about this industry. That's what I love about this job. So before I decided to do this full time, I worked in corporate, worked at Clayton Homes at their corporate office for a little while.
Okay.
That was routine.
Yeah.
With what I do now, I mean, I've seen beautiful houses, but you may leave that house and in the afternoon go to a house that is in terrible condition. No 2 days are exactly the same. The houses are different. The clients, the people I've met over the years, you could write a book about. But yeah, every house we find new things every day where you think you've seen it all, and then you see some home repair or the stories that people like the most are the encounters that I see in crawl spaces. So we've ran into groundhogs that have babies We've ran into raccoons, black snakes, rattlesnakes. So yeah, I mean every day is like an adventure.
I'm gonna tell you right now, somebody will hear that and be like,
Yeah,
we're selling the house because we're on a crawl space. We need to get a slab. But so like again, talking with Zach because he's in a lot of crawl spaces.
yeah.
That's a spot. That's a place in the house where people just don't frequent.
Mm-mm.
They don't. So that's an open space that is somewhat climate controlled that animals like.
So I go in crawl spaces every day, and my crawl space at home, I very rarely go into. So after I do it and I get home, I'm like, I'm not gonna. So
Right.
yeah, I have to force myself to go into mine. So other people who really might not even know what they're looking for in there. Yeah, it's not a place that very many people go into and look at.
So a couple things that you guys. Well, one topic I kind of wanted to hit on a little bit for anybody who's listening to this, who's like getting into like I'm getting set up to buy a house. There's a couple things that home inspectors point out that we then normally have to have a conversation about because our contracts are written as such that you're going to point stuff out because it's informative to the buyer, but it's not necessarily something that is negotiable,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so like one of those things are going to be cosmetics.
Yep.
Right. So it's very important, and it's been hard the last couple of years
Mm-hmm.
to have enough time to really look at a house. But typically, cosmetic stuff is something that you already figure into your offer.
Right.
But it's specifically written out in the home inspection section of the contract that cosmetics are not part of the negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, and this is one that is tricky, is the seller's not required to bring the house to code.
Yep.
And I would say the section or the spot in the home inspection that normally comes up is typically electrical.
Yep.
A couple ones I've seen that we've dealt with are electrical panels.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the house is old enough; it still has fuses.
Yeah.
And
GFCIs.
then GFCIs.
Yep.
Now, we've managed to get a lot of those negotiated because, first of all, GFCIs are not that expensive or hard to install.
Right.
We've got electricians that can do that. But ultimately, it's a safety item.
Yep.
So it's this weird loophole. I've only had one agent kick back and say, "Hey, this house was built to the code of the time,
Right.
and the seller's not going to do this because." I've only had one in all these years, but it is a safety issue. So for a buyer who's buying a house, like they're going to want these things.
Yeah.
The electrical panel, on the other hand, like that is a little bit more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
There's one electrical panel.
Federal Pacific.
Yeah. Man, I'll tell you what. If I see a house with that, I already know like.
Yeah.
It's a done. I mean that panel is getting replaced.
And here's what you run into sometimes, even though it was code when it was built. All that's true, but a lot of times, what you may run into as far as maybe GFCIs or Federal Pacific is you're going to have trouble. You're going to get pushback from either the loan process, insurance. There's different pushbacks you're going to get from just the buyer or the home inspector.
Yeah.
Or an appraiser. Appraisers will flag that sometimes, just because they're safety related.
Yeah, especially depending on what kind of loan product you're getting. So I'm gonna go back to that Federal Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that panel? Because there's a bunch of different panels.
Yeah.
Why is that panel a problem?
Yeah. So for a long time, we were just taught, hey, Federal Pacific panels are bad. Here is the problem with them. Call them out and ask for them to be replaced. That is drilled to us in our schooling.
Okay.
But when you get out and you start pulling the cover off and looking, you're like, oh, well, this is true. So what happened with Federal Pacific? It was really popular 70s, kind of got over into the early 80s. So the breakers were faulty.
Okay.
So when they were getting hot and they were supposed to trip, they would not trip.
Oh.
Yes. So they would get hot and it would cause a fire at the panel box itself. So we have pulled covers off of those before and seen wiring that is getting melted back from the breaker itself. So yeah, it was fault. The breakers were faulty and they weren't tripping. So
if you own an older home in like the mid 70s,
Yep.
like go check your panel. If it says Federal Pacific on it, give us a call because I can hook you up with an electrician who can help you get that swapped out. Because the one thing that's supposed to prevent a fire is actually causing a fire.
yeah.
I mean, that's the irony of that.
Yeah, that failed. They failed on their box.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, are there limitations? Like when you're doing a home inspection, are there limitations? Because I know sometimes, you know, we'll talk to somebody who maybe they're getting ready to sell a house and they're like, oh, when I bought the house, the home inspector didn't do this or tell me this or say that. But then you start to think about it. I'm like, well, they probably did, but there was a limitation.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about that. Like, where's the line drawn where you can't go any further?
Yeah. Well, codes. We touch codes are a big one. So we try to make it clear to everybody that we are not code inspectors. We're checking for general building practices. So and the thing with codes too, they change, county to county, city to city. You know, codes are going to be a little different everywhere. So whenever we see things like, you know, say GFCIs on an older home, we will recommend an upgrade. But yeah, so codes are one thing. So there's limitations on what we can physically do. There's some crawl spaces that, you know, unfortunately they were built a foot and a half off the ground, and it's just impossible to get into.
It's not really a crawl.
No, it'd be a crawl for a cat. There's roofs that are, you know, a pitch, a 10-12 pitch that's metal. So we can't walk on that roof. So that's kind of the bigger limitations, or just what you're physically able to see. Another thing too, and it gets hard. So we try our absolute best to give a buyer a snapshot of that day.
Mm-hmm.
Here is what the house looks like today. Here are the problems that we have identified after a lot of research and inspection. But that could change. You know, if today is 90 degrees and sunny, when it's 70 degrees and raining and blowing sideways, there may be something pop up that we couldn't.
You're not a fortune teller.
Yeah, I tell everybody, if I could predict what's going to happen, really you would have to be there in all seasons. I tell everybody that really the only way for me to be able to tell you every single little thing that's going to happen would be for me to move into the home with you for the first 6 months or so that you're there, and we'll kind of look at everything together in different patterns, different weather, and they're like, okay, well, you know, we'll take your word to that.
That's funny. That's something that comes up. So like there are roles in real estate that I'm just like I would not like that position from the standpoint that I feel like people really love their home inspector, or they come up with some reason that they don't.
Yeah.
And typically it's something that At the end of the day, I'm like, well, there's no way that person would have been able to see that,
Right.
or how would they be able to tell? I mean, today it's raining. You're going to do a home inspection later today. The person who that home inspection's for, they're going to get the benefit of you being able to see how that house reacts to rain.
Yep.
On the downside, there may be some things you don't get to check because it's raining.
Right.
Same thing like if it's cold or hot. Like, you can't run the heat, right? Or
Yep.
can you run the heat when it's hot out?
No. Can't run the heat. Can't. Same thing. Can't run the air conditioner when it's
cold
outside.
So there are certain limitations to that home inspection, but like you said, I like how it's like a snapshot in time. This is what the house was like today with everything that I could check. And we do have houses around. We do have old houses in this community where they're on a crawl or they're on some weird dirt, kind of basement thing.
Yep.
And there's not everything you can see, and it's very interesting. You'll call out stuff that you're like, hey, this isn't like proper. And then sometimes I have to talk to the consumer and say, okay, I 100% agree. However, this house has been here for 100 years.
Right.
Like it's like that's fixable, but clearly it's not falling over.
Right.
When we travel to places like Savannah and Charleston and you see these old houses and you're like, I know that there's stuff in there that ain't to code,
Yeah.
So anyways, it's just an interesting aspect. So what would you say is some of like we touched a little bit on like animals and stuff, but what's some of the craziest stuff maybe you've seen or like shocking, like I can't believe this is sitting here?
Yeah. There's so many. It's interesting, house construction wise, just to see how things have evolved over the years. Sometimes for the better, sometimes not for the better.
Okay.
You'll get in 100-year-old houses that are standing and doing well, and the floor joists are trees. Trees that they've cut down and sawed out and laid across. Or, it's 4x8 oak joist that are solid as a rock,
Mm-hmm.
where, you may have a house that's 10 years old that the joists are rotten on them. So,
Yeah.
but as far as most interesting, that's like I said. That's what I like so much about this. You see new things every day. For the most part, people really enjoy the crawl space stories.
Yeah.
It's not much fun for me, but they love hearing that I've gotten trapped in a crawl space with a skunk. Like. But yeah, just there's not really one thing that sticks out because there's so many. Every day you have just neat stories, things that happen.
Well, what would you say are the most common things that you end up flagging? Because I can think of one or two off the top of my head that I can see in almost every inspection.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that I can almost guarantee that I'm going to see it before I go in there. Doors that don't latch shut. Regular settlement, regular maintenance, wax seals leaking on toilets. I see that a lot. Fogged windows. But I would say the number one issue that I usually run into on houses, especially here, is moisture related. We get a ton of rain. There is almost no such thing as flat property,
right,
in East Tennessee. So you get a ton of rain and you get a lot of different land that's sloping in toward a house. And we tell her water is undefeated. If water is sitting against your foundation, you are going to run into problems. Whether it's, from Zach's point of view and you have moisture and you have mold and mildew, Or if you get moisture against a house, it'll eventually create foundation problems.
Yeah.
That's why we see so many foundation problems around here. Rot. So yeah, moisture is the number one destroyer of a house, and something that we commonly run into all the time.
Yeah, water's in a lot of the, not everything, but like talking with Zach, a lot of it could just be averted by using downspout, gutter downspouts,
Yeah.
cleaning your gutters,
Yeah.
like simple maintenance, getting the water to kind of go away from your house. But it is amazing to see how there's nothing like walking into a basement home, especially the ones like you normally see where the walls exposed, like in a garage, and literally you can see the bow in the wall, and
Yep.
that's all just because of water. That's water
Yep.
pressure.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. Yeah, it is a tough conversation when we're with a buyer and we see a foundation issue, moisture, and we tell them, hey, it's probably going to be looking at somewhere in this ballpark to get it fixed. If they would have spent $50 on downspout leaders 10 years ago, we would not be having this conversation. So,
and I thought it was funny too. You talk about like the lots not being level. Every once in a while, well, actually, a lot of times, a lot of people want level lots.
yeah.
Right? They're like, I want a lot that's level, and I'm like, okay, so we just cut out 2/3 of all homes on the market.
Yeah.
I said because either the lot is sloping down, or it is sloping towards the it's either towards the house, away from the house, or it's level. Like it's really hard to find a true level lot.
I'll do the same thing. I'll get there with a buyer and they'll be moving from out of town. And I'll be like, man, this is a great lot. You get nice and level, and you got places, and they're like, no, this isn't level. And I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah,
it is level.
It is. Yeah, look around a little bit.
So I was gonna say, like, the one thing, and it's funny because I started thinking about this the other night. I haven't really seen it lately as much as I used to. But the valve off of a water heater,
Yep.
that tube, I mean, I'm talking for like 6 years, every home inspection.
Yeah.
Missing the, what is that thing called again? It's the
Pressure
relief
pressure
valve.
relief valve. Yeah.
So it's supposed to have a tube that goes all the way down within 6 inches of the
Yep.
floor.
Yep.
And it's literally like a $5 thing you can get at Home Depot.
And it just
screws right on there.
Screws into it.
But man, I'm gonna tell you what. Like, if I didn't see that in a home inspection for a period of time, I was shocked.
Yeah. Well, and with that one, there's a lot of things. If you're doing FHA, VA, they have little pet peeves that they will go straight to that water heater and look, and if they don't see it, they'll say it. So I mean, it's an easy fix.
So on that note, because this is a curious question for me. I assume that's a safety related item.
Yep.
Because when that thing pops, when it lets pressure out,
It
sprays,
like,
and that's gonna be hot water.
Very hot water. Yep.
So now, obviously, they put a pressure relief valve on there for it to do a job. If it does it, does that mean there's a problem with the water heater?
Yeah. Yep. So if it's leaking, if they have everything perfect and you see it leaking, could be a couple things. So if that water heater builds up too much pressure inside of it, that's the safety mechanism where it lets some of that pressure out. With that said, it's mechanical, so they will go bad. So sometimes they just open up on their own and start leaking.
Okay.
And just the valve itself
So it needs to be
replaced.
But it doesn't mean that there's something necessarily wrong with the water heater, like the heater itself.
Right. Yeah.
It could just be a faulty valve.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So that brings me to another point or question. When you point stuff out in a home inspection, you're saying, hey, this didn't operate correctly.
Yep.
Or this doesn't look right.
Right.
And typically the line after that is a qualified, or expert or whatever
Yep.
in that field should check this out.
Should evaluate it.
So at the end of the day, you're not the HVAC guy.
Right. Yep.
You're not the structural engineer.
Yep.
But you are the guy who gets to go and find all that stuff.
Yep.
And I would say at this point you probably have a pretty good idea of everything, but like you know what the fix is, or but that's not necessarily that is another limitation. Like you're not there to prescribe the fix.
We are generalists, so we know how to find a lot of things. As far as fixing it, even though we've been around and we've seen a lot of that, that is not our specialty.
Yeah.
So we have learned to kind of bow out from there and let the professional, because also they can give them a good general idea of what kind of costs they're looking at.
Right.
Where that's something, we talked about it earlier, that is something that's changed in the last 5 years. What I used to think something should cost to fix is probably doubled now.
Right.
So yeah, we are very good finders, but after that, we try to put it in the right person's hands.
So speaking of cost, like like heat and air is a good example. Like used to be, it's not uncommon to come across a house that has an older heat and air unit, right? I mean, and you guys normally call out if it's 15 years or older, it's reached the end of its normal life expectancy, I believe is the line. Doesn't mean it's not working right.
Right.
It's just old. And used to be, man, I could just with ease say, well, you're looking at like $5,000 to fix it, like to replace this whole thing.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't even really know because the pricing still changes. So I talked with Chris Waddell over at Elite, and he's like things are still, the more and more regulations they pass, the more standards they pass, the more expensive these things become.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've had to start bowing. We've had to start bowing out on, saying what something would cost, and making sure we get that quote up front.
Yeah.
Because man, yeah, it's, especially if you're trying to like work a deal, the last thing you want to do is say, oh yeah, $5,000, and they come back and it's, 12.
Yeah.
And which is not unrealistic these days. Like heat and air's definitely gone up.
Right. Yeah.
Which is why it's important to work with an agent who has a lot of people in those trades.
That's right. Yeah. Have good contacts. Yeah.
So another topic, because this is something that I've seen a lot lately. I hear new construction homes. Mm-hmm. We talked about code and stuff like that. Yep. When a home is being built, it has to go through inspections.
Yep.
From the city or county level, right?
Right.
Okay. That person is looking to make sure that things are built to code, correct? Mm-hmm. Does that mean that the home buyer should not get a home inspection?
Here is what I tell people about new construction, and there's two different ways to kind of tackle this. So, one, yes, there are things that go through code, but the code inspectors are not looking at every inch of it. So you can either get a home inspection before you close on a new construction, and it's not uncommon for us to find items on a new construction. A lot of times it's punch list items, but we've found significant items even on new construction. So a lot of people feel good getting the home inspection on new constructions before they close. That way they can make their decision from there. If you choose not to do that, most builders will give you a 1-year builder's warranty. So some people, and I don't encourage one way or another. A lot of people will go ahead and close and then call us in 9 months into it and do a full home inspection before their 1-year warranty runs out and turn a list in.
Which I'll be honest with you, like I heard your dad mention that, and I was like, that's actually, to me, that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Right? Because typically the builder relies on you having lived in the home to find stuff, right? And I know the builder's in the business to make money, but at the end of the day, new construction homes are the most expensive homes on the market,
Right.
right? And you're buying a product that's new that you want to be in good working order. And sometimes there's things that you don't see to the just your day to day living in it.
Mm-hmm.
So having somebody come in it, because you might find this drain is actually leaking, or and of course now builder's warranty may be specific to certain
Right.
things they cover.
Yep.
But nonetheless, after a year living in the house, there may be items that even if the builder's not going to cover it, that's a good time for you to catch something because things have adjusted, things have gotten use, right?
You've lived in through every season. Yep.
Right? Yeah. So the things have expanded and contracted. You've dealt with moisture, humidity, and all that stuff. So I think that's a great time on a new construction home to get a home inspection. We always recommend our people get a home inspection before closing because number one, it is typically the easiest time to get a builder to fix things.
Yes.
Right? Because they are still, if you do it before your walkthrough, you hand them the list. They normally just run right through it. They're handling it with the punch list items. There's normally not an issue getting those things done. And you never know. It's like you never know what you're going to find. It's cheap. To me, it's almost like cheap insurance. It's another set of eyes. You're not going to see these things. I'm not going to see these things.
Right.
The inspector will see these things.
Yep.
And so, I always look at it like that. Now, I have heard, I know some new construction, sales, they're like, oh, you can get an inspection if you want, but the house has been through, code this many inspections. And I'm just like, it's not the same.
Yeah.
It's not the same. That guy doesn't care that, maybe this light switch doesn't work.
Right.
But your home inspector's going to find that.
Yep.
And you don't want to figure that out 2 weeks after moving in that, this whole thing is wired wrong. I was just in one yesterday where the lights to the stairs, weren't wired right.
Mm-hmm.
So you would have to go upstairs to flip the switch and then come back down and flip the switch in order for it to work right. Well, it would have been easy to not catch that if it hadn't have been for the home inspection. Because if the combo would have been set up right on a walkthrough, we'd be like, oh yeah, light works.
Yep. No, we were in a new construction a couple weeks ago that they had a water line in a wall on a second floor bathroom that the fitting was loose on it. So if you turn it on and off for a second,
everything works.
You're not going to see anything.
Yeah.
But if you turn on the bathtub and let it run for 5 minutes, all of a sudden you see it coming out. So
which is not something you want to experience when you're unpacking.
Yes, yeah.
And moving into a house.
First night in the house, taking a shower, and you come out and see that.
That's not cool. And so I always recommend that if you're buying a new construction. We've gone through the last couple of years where inventory's been tight. We've had a lot of people moving this way. The whole country's dealt with bidding wars and all that. And so I know this isn't just, unique to us. But one thing that we've seen is people bypassing inspections in order to get a house.
Yeah.
I will just go on record to say right now that nobody in my office has ever or will ever suggest that. If a buyer wants to take on that risk, then that is completely their thing. That's their decision.
Yeah.
But they've even changed our contracts now to where written in there's the option to, I check this box. I'm going to have a home inspection, but I'm not going to ask for repairs. I'm either going to buy the house or not.
Right.
And so I think that's helped alleviate a little bit of that, because the end result is, and sellers should always want the buyer to get a home inspection.
Oh, yeah.
Because what happens then is that buyer moves in that house, they later find out something, and the first thing they think, the seller didn't tell me that.
Yeah, wasn't disclosed.
It wasn't disclosed.
Yep.
And then, the next word is lawyer.
Yep.
And that's not a good. There's no good scenario there. Another little fun fact: those non-disclosure items are only you can only go back a year.
Yeah.
I've been told that by an attorney that after a year of living in that house, you find out something, then that you can't go back after the seller.
Yeah.
After a year. So there's, time is of the essence. You want somebody to inspect that home.
Right.
Sellers want people to inspect that.
Yeah.
I would think builders would always want an inspection because that's a liability they're taking off their plate.
Yeah. Well, and it's an easy quality control for them.
Yes.
They get a list put in front of them. And they say, "All right, well, let's finish it up." We don't have to think about what we still need to work on. So, yeah, most builders, that's an easy thing for them.
So, what is something? What would you say a buyer should? Obviously, I think anybody listening to this, we highly recommend Homespec. But if somebody's like, "Hey, I need to get a home inspection," maybe they're not even around here and they're listening to this.
Yep.
What should they look for in a home inspector?
I think so. We are all trained pretty similar. We all go through the same schooling. Look for kind of the same things. Everybody has their own different way of doing things, but I think one of the most important things that I feel like I can do as a home inspector is how I communicate things to them. Because there is no such thing as a perfect house.
Right.
There's always going to be issues, but how do you relay those issues to a buyer? You can make anything sound great. On the flip side, there's some you can make any problem sound terrible.
Right.
So I think communication is huge. How you relay and how you talk to them about things.
Yeah, I think that's big because I've seen buyers walk from deals that were definitely fixable. I mean, the fact of the matter is everything in a house is fixable given enough money.
Right.
Like depending on the issue, there's always a seller's selling, a buyer's buying. There's a way to fix it, but at the end of the day, like words that scare buyers, foundation issues,
Mm-hmm.
mold, those are probably the two biggest ones.
Yeah.
But both of those are fixable.
Yep.
And just like having Zach on here, like. Even when it comes to bringing out a contractor, like you want a contractor there that's going to tell you, like as honest of an opinion and not just try to sell you something. I got great story on a house we recently sold. Buyer made the offer. It was written in there that they would not ask for any repairs as long as it was under $5,000.
Yep.
Right. Well, they did the home inspection. Home inspector came back with there was a crack in the block. This was a basement ranch home where the garage was, in the basement, and so the corner of it there was a crack, and so they went and called a foundation company to come out, and that foundation company obviously gave them, they gave them a quote that was on the kind of the high side.
Yeah.
Right. Well, so they added a few other things, and obviously we were over $5,000. So they sent us over, the stuff. Well, we went and took what I would consider a calculated risk, and we called a structural engineer.
Yep.
To come out and look at that.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why it's a calculated risk is, number one, he could say that doesn't need anything. Like a structural engineer is like the end all be all when it comes to this stuff. So he could say, hey, no, like there's nothing to see here, or he could say rip the whole house down and start over.
Needs more. Yeah.
Needs more. Needs way more than what was quoted. Like, and so if he says that, then that's that's where you're at, right? Then you need more. So he came back and he wrote a letter, and literally it was half of the amount of work that needed to be done.
Right.
So for our seller, this worked out great because it put everything under the $5,000 limit.
Yeah.
Buyer took that on. Now was the foundation company being, you know, sneaky, or were they just trying to sell? I don't know.
Right.
At the end of the day, they could have just been covering because they're not a structural engineer.
Yeah.
So they could have been like, well, hey, we'll doubly fix this.
Yeah.
And
Let's
there
make
won't
sure.
there'll be no issues.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just it is definitely an interesting situation.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's where it's important that you have communication. You have people in your corner. I mean, you know, luckily we have a couple structural engineers we can call if we need. We have crawl-space people. I will say it is harder and harder to find. I think a foundation company that's not just always selling.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we've covered just about every aspect of like what a person probably needs to know about home inspection.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do want to talk a little bit about your experience here. Like you've basically grown up here in East Tennessee.
Yeah.
So my first question: how long have you lived in East Tennessee? Well, all your life.
Yeah, my whole life. So grew up here from Anderson County. Went to school at UT. You know, so moved to Knoxville for a little while, and now I live back in Norris again in Anderson County. And you know, it's funny. A lot of people that even live here, they live here, and I tell them, "Oh, I'm from Norris," and they're like, "Oh, the lake." And I'm like, no, there's a little town up there too. There's a town, and they're like, "Really? We never knew that." So yeah, it's a cool area. So Norris is a tiny town. They built the town when they were building the lake. So a lot of old houses, sidewalks, easily accessible to get outside and play and be close to the water. So yeah, it's a neat place.
Awesome. So well, first of all, I'd like to say you put a lot of miles on your car.
Yes. Yeah.
Because if you do the bulk of your inspections here in Knoxville and you live in Norris, that alone is a drive.
I think last year I put somewhere around 40,000 miles on there. So yeah, scooting around quite a bit.
So if you were to buy a brand new car, your warranty would literally last you maybe a year and a half.
Yeah.
Like that's it. Maybe a little over a year. So quick plug. You and your dad both drive Toyota 4Runners?
Yes. So we both have 4Runners, and when that one goes out on me, I will probably get another one. Gets decent gas mileage, which we need for all the driving that we do. It's big enough that we can fit tools, ladder, everything that we need in there. And gosh, I'm up to I have 345,000 miles on mine. I think my dad has 450,000 miles on his.
That's crazy.
And we maintain them. You know, we change the oil. You know, do the regular stuff that you should do, but they're still going. You know,
going strong.
Yeah, going strong.
That's awesome. What do you for somebody who's maybe listening to this, who's thinking about moving to the area? You know, hearing from a native. I'm not a native. I moved here from somewhere else.
Yeah.
You've been here. What? You know, most people grow up in an area and they want to leave.
Yeah.
But you're here. What is your favorite thing? What is it you like about East Tennessee?
Yeah. I think what's so nice about it is Knoxville is a big enough city that you have everything that you need right here. You know, everything that I could ever want, I can find here. But at the same time, there's so many resources close by. It's full of lakes. We have the Smoky Mountains that are an hour away. But what I hear the most, and what I see too, so I've traveled a lot. I've been around everywhere. Or in East Tennessee, you can't beat the people. You know, as far as just friendly people, you know, able to help, willing to reach out. The people are great in East Tennessee.
I will second that. I actually lived a period of time in Asheville, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Actually, where my daughter's born. Lived there for a few years. Moved back to Florida because I'm from Florida. Lived there for 6 years, and after 6 years, I was just like, why am I here?
Yeah.
And I have to say it has something to do with just this region. Whether you're on the North Carolina side or the Tennessee side, my mom lives within 5 minutes of the line, and there's great people all along East Tennessee. It's just something about it that it drew me back, and I love it here myself.
Yeah.
And the people. Well, that was a big part of it.
Yeah, yeah, the people, and just, I mean, you don't have to be in the Smoky Mountains just the natural beauty of it. I mean, it's just a beautiful place.
Oh man, some days, what's the cool part about Four Seasons too, because your drive, even if you make the same commute, if you just take a minute to look around, it is different.
Yeah.
Right. So like there are some mornings that I'm coming down Campbell Station, and you kind of like crest the hill a little bit, and out in the distance you see mountains and the sun coming up kind of deal. Just the way the pink in the sky and all that, and it's just really awesome.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite things to do around here?
Yeah. Yeah. So
other than hang out in crawl spaces with raccoons.
Yeah. We like being we're active, so where we live especially, we walk and ride bikes and run. A plug for Norris on this one. So something neat about it, the town is very walkable, close in together, but there's an area that joins the town called the Watershed.
Okay.
Which is basically 2,500 acres of hiking trails right against the lake.
Awesome.
So mountain biking, I don't mountain bike, but just to be able to get back in there and walk, I can walk from my house and be in there. But no, I've got a wife, I've got 2 little girls, so we are always running around outside doing something. So
awesome. And I'm gonna have to check that out. I think we're very familiar with Norris Lake.
Yeah.
We've sold some homes up that way. Love Norris Lake. It's a beautiful lake. I don't know that I've spent a whole lot of time in the town of Norris.
You need to check. I'll give you the personal tour.
I'm down for that.
It'll take 3 minutes to get through the whole.
So it sounds like the awesome small town feel that I think a lot of people, kind of looking for.
Yeah, especially, I mean, it's great for anybody, but to have a family with small kids, we can walk them to school in the mornings. They walk home from school. It's kind of a throwback feel to it, where everybody's friendly, everybody knows everybody. You can walk to the post office and to the grocery store. So yeah, it's a neat place.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so in all your travels around East Tennessee, what's one of your favorite places to eat?
Oh gosh, it's like every town that we go to, we try to find like the small local like hole in the wall place, which is usually great food but terrible for you. So that kind of place. Yeah, I'll say this, and I've lived here my whole life. There are still places that I've never ate before. So the last place that we went to, and you need to take Terry Joe there if you've never been before.
I'm gonna make a note.
Make a note. We went there for Valentine's Day. My wife has always wanted to go, and we haven't been yet. So we went to RT Lodge in Maryville.
Yes,
and
yeah, I've been there.
It was great. Food was great. I like the. It's like an old school charm to it, an older place. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna say, just because that's the last kind of local place that I've been to recently.
So yeah, RT Lodge is really cool. I had always heard about it. Same kind of deal. Didn't even really know exactly where it is, but it's funny because when you're there, you feel so tucked away.
Yeah.
But it's really not that far out of town. It's like pretty much in Maryville.
Yeah.
Like, and also didn't realize. I mean, this is just, I guess, kind of silliness. But didn't know what RT stood for.
Yeah.
Ruby Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
so it
just we didn't figure that out till we pulled in, and it was like Ruby Tuesday Drive or something like that. We're like, oh.
The history on it's really neat. So I was reading all up on it when I was there. So they Ruby Tuesday bought it from I don't know, but originally that whole place was built by Andrew Carnegie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So his wife loved that whole kind of foothills area. So that is where she retired to. So yeah, that's how it originally came to be there.
And then Ruby Tuesdays bought it to be wasn't it like a training facility?
Yeah, it was like
they would bring all the chefs in and stuff and do that. And now they've got a couple. I mean, I don't know how long they've been there, but places like it's a lodge, so there's places for you to stay.
Yeah.
And yeah, the food there is awesome. We went for it was like a kind of like a chef farmer kind of thing. It was like a weekend deal. It had great food, but yeah, and it backs up to Maryville College.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of land. Like we went on they call it foraging, but we went on basically like a hiking trail.
Yeah.
And got to see some cool stuff. So no, that is an awesome place. I'm glad you mentioned that because I highly recommend because you can go there just for dinner.
Yeah. That's what we did. We just went for dinner. We finished dinner and we walked around. They have some trails and stuff through there, so it was beautiful. We loved it.
Place is definitely pretty at night. They've got like a large koi pond. They got a big fire pit. They've got out front. There's another like a fireplace deal where you can kind of sit and hang out. I really enjoyed how they had. At least I don't know if they always do or not, or if it was just for that event, but they had a lot of like string lights up and stuff. So it was a very cool place.
Well, I thought I was going to give you a good tip for Terry Joe. I need to get some from you.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Well, I'll be honest with you. It just so happened for that deal, like a group of friends were going. One couple couldn't because it was a weekend type deal. One couple couldn't go, and we basically bought their tickets.
Oh, cool.
If it hadn't been for that, I still would have never been.
Yeah.
So it was just happen chance. So that's awesome, man. I've really enjoyed this. Let me ask you, if somebody, let's just say there's somebody out there listening to this,
Sure.
and they're not already using the Knox Fox Real Estate Group, which would. I don't know why anybody would do that, but but let's just say somebody's out there and they're like, hey, I want to get a home inspection. Mm-hmm. What's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, and I'll even take it a step further than that. We're always open to just chat. Even if it's not a home inspection, if you live somewhere and you're like, hey, I've always had a question about how my crawl space, why this is going on in there. Yeah. We're open to chat to anybody. So the best way is my phone. I've always got my phone on me, 865-806-6173, or my email is daniel@homespec.inc.com. So
homeспec.inc.com.
Yep.
And in your website, homeспec.inc.com?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So and people can also schedule right through your
Yeah, they
website.
can go straight to it and look in it, and it shows our full availability and schedule. So
awesome, awesome, man. Well, Daniel, I really appreciate it. I think this has been very informative and fun. I'm hoping that it looks like the rain has sort of chilled out a little bit. So I'm hoping the rest of your day goes smooth and no more traffic.
Oh, I know. Yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, thanks for having me on. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. Appreciate you guys too. You're always great to work with.
Thank you. All right, buddy. I'm sure I will see you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Eric.
All right.